Hello and welcome to this LØRN series with BI about sustainability and cooperative strategy. My name is Silvija and today I host Lars Huemer from BI and Ketil Høigaard from Parkio. The theme for this case is sustainability-driven strategies through cooperative parking. And we will discuss, among other things, new data-driven and sustainability-driven strategies and how they create more space for dynamic and flexible ecosystems. And why is this a good strategy and a good sustainability? First of all, I would like to welcome my two guests, my two experts, and ask them very briefly to introduce themselves. And we will start with Lars, and then we will go to Ketil.
Thank you, Silvija. So my name is Lars Huemer, and I work as a professor at BI Norwegian Business School, the Department of Strategy and Entrepreneurship. And I've had the pleasure of following Parqio for quite some time, and I'm really looking forward to hear the latest news from Ketil.
Thank you, Silvija. My name is Ketil Hoigaard, and I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Parkio. We've been working together with Lars for a while, and also had some of his students following us, so that's been very interesting. We sit in Forskningsparken here in Oslo.
And just another sentence on Parkio before we go more deeply into it. But I've understood you correctly. It's kind of an Airbnb for garages.
Yeah, we were actually. I think I would rather describe us as a transformative company who tries to take the space in shared garages and transform it into mobility and service hubs. So it's not so much about parking, it's about mobility and services instead of owned cars in the garage in the future.
I love this idea. Can I just try to kind of paint my picture based on what I've heard you say now? I'm thinking, mobility is in huge change, and our city planners haven't really caught up with that speed of change. And we are going from a space where, we have privately owned, very large garages, or privately owned shared garages in houses, to garages that need to be used more efficiently when we have more shared cars and eventually autonomous cars, because the time in garage will perhaps be smaller when a shared car is used more efficiently, right?
Exactly. So if you look at the garages, they've been built based on that people own their own cars. That is only used 5% of the time. And there's a huge change going on in urban areas. There's less space for cars. There's less sustainability for cars. And the city planners all over the world is trying to change the cities to make room for people and not cars. So I think what we're trying to do is to ready urban areas for this. It's already happening in Nordic and European cities. But the other change is that digitization of access is coming into buildings. It's digital keys. The end users or residents are changing their behaviors. Like they can do anything with their phone now, and suddenly they don't really feel the need to have a physical key or a remote control to open the garage. So people are changing their digital behavior, and the cities are changing to new sustainability and opening up, and those two are colliding with this old use of garages where you kind of park your car and let it stay there for 95% of the time. So we are focusing on making more efficient use of that for shared garages, having bicycles in there, shared mobility and bicycles, and then let it become a service center, because the main problem here is that as you take away the on-street parking in cities to give room for bicycle lanes, etc., as we see especially in the Nordic cities and Oslo, where are the service providers going to park? Where is the home care? Where is the shared mobility? The carpenter, Oda, the home delivery? They have nowhere to park anymore. So we are opening up the garages also to become a service center for the service providers, for short-term parking, delivery of goods, logistics, mobility, etc. And then that resource can again be shared in the neighborhood. So even if it's not your garage, maybe you can go across the street and pick up your goods in a refrigerated store box, or the shared mobility from Otto or MoveAbout, and then we start to look differently at the existing and future infrastructure of our urban areas. So that's what Parkio is about. It's not about Airbnb. It's about better use of existing and future space underneath our cities. The hidden gold.
I think this is brilliant. I haven't thought about the fact that our garages are this, unused, super valuable equity in our cities and wherever we live, and that it should become a more actively used space and perhaps a service center for this new kind of logistics, where the last mile is the problem we haven't solved, right?
Yeah, and the possibilities there are enormous. Ketil's colleagues, Emil and Henrik, sometimes come and have guest lectures at BI. And I think the last time we had a class, we have an alliance with Fudan School of Management in Shanghai. So we asked these MBA students to come up with ideas of how could you utilize this garage space. And of course, Shanghai is very different from Oslo. So the ideas that Parkio received the last time was that the garages could be used for karaoke and for meditation space. Yeah. I mean, it's endless.
But the point here we are making is that Airbnb is thinking mainly about, a place where you work or sleep, right? Actually, mainly sleep, right? While there are all these other spaces that are now an integrated part of our everyday lives that could be used much more efficiently than they are today, and they are kind of off the radar in many ways. So we have co-working spaces, we have now co-living spaces with Airbnb and such, but we don't have co-service places. And, each man his own garage. And I'm also toying with the idea, well, so we are charging our cars in our garages. Our garages have become also energy markets, right? So maybe this whole idea of enabling them with energy distribution capacity, maybe they can make money for the building, maybe battery capacity. So a huge new way of enabling smart buildings and smart cities in a dimension I haven't thought about.
Exactly. And so this whole electrification of mobility is fantastic, but it doesn't really solve some of the biggest problem, which is space in the future. If everybody has a new car but is electric, we will still have queues. We will still use enormous space for storing the cars when they're not in use. And we think that slowly but surely you will see garages in the future being more and more a service mobility and service center, and less a storing of own mobility like cars. So we're already testing this out and piloting a lot of the services, and we see some of the garages now using the parking spaces for different shared cars, for lockers for expensive bikes, charging for expensive bikes, micromobility, first and last mile lockers in the garage, so the logistic go in and out in the garage and not outside where people are using the outer area. So all of these are coming together as people get digital and the society changes, and the home care will explode in Norway and Europe. So most of us will need to be getting old at home. So that will also need to be taken care of. So who is coming? Where should they park? And they are in a hurry to service as many as possible. And natural place is in the same building, of course, and not on a street which doesn't have any parking anymore.
And if you could integrate this with, one of the reasons I ended up buying a Tesla is that I wanted to have this network of chargers. But if I could, in addition, have a network of parkings, where it can easily find a place for me nearby that I can leave my car, run and do what I need to do and get on with my next thing. I mean, this would be a huge contribution to my new hybrid life, right?
Yes, and when it comes to electrification, we are looking into that together with a lot of partners, because it's a huge investment in electrification in urban areas in Europe, and especially in Norway, of course. But the strange thing is that only 10 to 15% of the time the electric cars is charging, and the rest of the time those chargers are not in use. So ideally, you could say you don't need that many charges in a garage. You just need enough charges for what you need to charge. And also it should be more flexible, that you should just park somewhere, charge somewhere and leave again, and not your space. So it's this own thing to a more shared thing that we are working on.
Both in terms of chargers and the Tesla. You don't have to own the Tesla or the space.
No, and there are two things happening here. So we will see autonomous cars in the next 5 to 10 years. We've said that a long time, but okay. So we're also working with Applied Autonomy and other partners to map the inside space of the garages, so the cars can actually navigate there, because this is unmapped space. We are kind of also being a
I'm the first one in queue to use this, because I'm one of these drivers that are really hoping for autonomy, and especially in places like tight garages. Not really. Listen, Ketil, and also if you could please work with people planning these garages. There is a really funny picture you have to take in the parking space of the Institute for Informatics at University of Oslo in Blindern. They have left this wonderful space for electric cars, except they assume that they will be size of Think. Right? Yeah. So you can barely park your bicycle there and now we have the Teslas, and they are just gone the wrong direction in size. So, how do you make these humongous cars navigate those super tight spaces more efficiently? That'd be so useful.
Yeah, that is ahead of us. But what we're doing now is to map it and get that data from OBOS and other property developers, and then we can give that data to companies like Tesla and others, so they can navigate better in the garages. But the most important thing is to tell some kind of online system, where is it free space? Where can I park? What is available right now as I need to deliver my service or be a guest parking? So all of this needs to be connected, and we're working on that. But one of the most interesting things we've done is to automate the opening. So you just approach the gate, and if you're supposed to be there, it will open for you automatically. And it seems like a small thing, but we think that in the future you will not be in your own car. You will maybe be on a bike, on a long bike, long tail, and have the kids and the groceries on that bike. The last thing you want to do is to stop, find your mobile or something to open that gate. You just want this to be seamless. So we are working now, we do it now with automatic number plate recognition with a camera, but we're now launching this with the proximity as long as you have your phone with you. And that means that also smaller mobility will automatically seamless get openings as they approach the gate. And we think that kind of seamlessness makes sense when it's more and more shared space, right? So we actually have a red and green lamp outside that tells it's free space or there's free shared mobility. And then as you hire that mobility from Otto or MoveAbout, you will be able to open that gate even if you normally are not have access. So we kind of open these square kilometers of space for everybody over time, which has been locked off with remote controls for decades.
So, Ketil, I think this is a great illustration of what Parqio is and what it is doing and what it can do. But there's also been you put in a few hours to make this happen. And it has been making the different actors see what you're trying to do is something that has been challenging. And I know you have there's an interesting story about, for instance, about access and the gate, the garage producers and so forth. Could you tell us a little bit about how this worked out?
Yeah, so we as founders in Parqio have been very interested in ecosystem, and especially me, who has an ecosystem background from large companies, to create them and nurture them in a way. And we had the same approach with Parkio. But the interesting thing is that people don't think a garage is advanced. It's just a place and it's a gate and that's it. But as you open up this ecosystem, as everything else, the complexity increases. So why are gates in garages not digitized today? All over the world, there's remote controls or keys, while you have a lot of other things that are digitized. So why is it lagging behind and have been lagging behind? And the main reason is that the gate providers who are making the gate have provided the keys, and the keys has been remote controls who was invented in the 60s. And the main revenue has been the remote controls. So again, we see successful business models stopping or slowing down innovation, because they want really to sell a remote control from China that costs 50 and sell it for 600, right? So they don't want to digitize the gate because it doesn't really make sense for them. Mm. But now things are changing. People can open their bank, their door, everything with their phone. So they're like, I'm not having this one physical thing in my life to open that one gate. So things are really changing now. And as we dived into this ecosystem, we had to learn a lot, because if we were to change things, we could not compete with all the whole value chain. We had to make them support us and push us into the customers. So what we did was to create value for everybody in the value chain, so they could change and they wanted to change instead of stopping change. So instead of just opening the gate, we made a device that extracts data from the gate itself. What position is it in? Is it any error messages? And mind-blowing enough, this has not been done by the gate providers. There's still somebody who has to be sent out and read that little display. But now it's digitized, so we actually export data to them, and then they can create new business models instead of the remote controls. They can give service agreements and actually fix the gate and count the number of times it's open and so on. And they can create new value with new tools that we provide to them. So that's a good example on how we work with partners. But it's even more complex when we want to invite all the service partners into a space they're not usually in. Like car sharing companies don't really want a car inside a garage because it's not visible for everybody. And it's locked off. So what we did is to work with the car sharing companies so that people who don't usually have access to the car can see the car in the map of Otto or Movabout or Hyre. And then when they rent it, they get access. So you can actually open up that way. And that solves a problem for them because they have less and less space on street parking, which is disappearing, to have their cars. So it's about finding value and getting insight for each of the partners in the value chain. And also for the end customer. So that's a huge job, but now it's really working in a way. We don't sell anything. Our partners push us because they get value from our product in some way.
If I can just underline the idea of the ecosystem creator here, I think the most powerful, most successful, most beautiful digital companies that I know of being created are the ones that create a new ecosystem. And to me, it sounds like you're quite well on your way. And of course, there is a huge friction bringing on new people in your ecosystem. Everybody wants to do it alone and everybody wants to own their data and so on. But you have a very, very good reason to do this. And I think just this idea of, removing the cars from the street parking. I mean, I see higher when I'm on the street and driving, but I really don't want to see them on a parking. I really don't want to see parked cars in my city. And I know that the city planners don't want it either. So the idea of Fornebu, where I live, is that all the garages are underground, right? And we have this eternal problem of not being able to go and visit each other by cars because you never figure out how to get into, the guest parking in that garage. And your system can solve things like this. There could be shared QR codes. You could get a parking for today by sending a QR code to somebody, like a ticket almost, right? That you can, etc.
Actually, we are doing that now, and Fornebu is where we have already a lot of installation. I will have all of the new installation in Fornebu through OBOS. Mm-hmm. But what we do is that you, as a resident, and you get guests, you will invite your guests, and the minute you invite your guests, they will get information from us and direction and a map. And as they approach that gate, it will automatically open if they put in their registration number, and they will be directed to the guest parking inside. So we do this already today. So guest parking both inside and outside the garage is part of our solution, because it's that flow is very important for us, that seamless flow, and still be very secure and keep the GDPR and all of these things.
So Lars, where's the strategy and where's the sustainability? What do you want to focus on?
Oh, it's very, to me, it's very obvious and clear in this case. It's about making, from a competitive standpoint, in which we would do a competitive analysis, the garage that is sort of the focal resource here wouldn't come out with flying colors. It's a very boring, unattractive, non-sexy resource. End of story. But they have turned gray cement into gold and are on their way of doing it.
You've just given him a new tagline: "We make garages sexy."
Yeah,
again,
there you go. and that's not easy. It is by connecting the garage to other resources, combining and making what we call resource bundles, and building this ecosystem that links to cooperative strategy. That is very much sort of to the heart of cooperative strategy. You're trying to help others to create value. You make others create value for you, which is very different from the idea of having a competitive advantage. We're all seeking for competitive advantages, but the idea of a competitive advantage is very much based on the notion that I'm better than you. I will sort of beat you. It's not so much focusing on how I can become better together with you. How can we co-create value and make something together? And so I think that's really key and central to me. And I think many of the listeners would love to learn more about how Parqio and how they actually went about to, because sort of helping to change someone's business model, you can say that in a sentence, but it takes more than a weekend. That's my guess. So how?
We've been learning, and we're still learning. And I think insight and being very humble, even if we are very proud of what we've done, every time we get customer interaction, we listen. Every time we talk to a partner, we listen. We take notes. We are always moving. We will never be finished. So I think that is what we've been very good at, to listen and understand and see the complexity and not tell people what the answer is. And we are starting to tick off from property developers, entrepreneurs, city builders. Everybody is now seeing the value of Parkio, but we are still listening. It's not, it's part of it. So I think it's very much about insight and understanding. And as a startup, of course, insight is key always to the end customer. But for us, insight to the ecosystem is just as important. So I don't know if that answered the question, but that's how we work.
It definitely does. And I think we often say we will, but do we really implement it? We often listen to reply, but do we actually listen to understand? And I think that's part of your message here.
Lars, I'd like you to unpack the concept data-driven strategy, because we introduced this and that's what we talk about now as well. So that's also one of those nicely sounding phrases that I think people just know. Of course, we are data-driven. So how is this a data-driven strategy?
It is. I mean, Ketil had, I think, the best practical illustration here about how they are starting to provide hardcore, concrete data to the garage producers. So data-driven strategy to me in this case implies that Parqio is helping a set of companies that before produced a physical product, a gate, and a not so modern type of key to make money. They were essentially product oriented. The data can now help them to transform to become service companies. So they can, instead of being the producer of a physical product, which I sell and then I'm basically done, there may be some service. The main thing becomes an access service. But to make that transition, they will need data. I don't know if you would agree, guys.
Yeah, I would agree very much, but I think I have an even better example. So what
Good.
we do now, so we are data-driven, but the main, we do create a lot of value for everybody in the chain and users and so on. But the real goal is actually that we can now measure what happens if you put in a car-sharing car or shared mobility or a bike locker or anything in a garage. We can actually measure how does that change behavior, mobility behavior, logistic behavior for that building, the residents, the neighborhood. We can see that people are selling the cars and putting the parking spot inside the building for free for other use. So we can actually track in real time what works for getting people to change mobility and logistic behavior in real time. And that data is, of course, extremely valuable for car sharing companies. What kind of car should be in the garage? Should it be a small car, big car? How many? Which season? Summer, winter, rain? There's a million data points that we are gathering that give them, again, an advantage and give the end users a much better service. So in that sense, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I think this is something you've started to develop quite recently, right?
Yes.
And to me, this is an example of my previous example was, I think it's valid, but it's more on a micro level. This is really an illustration of data-driven strategy on the ecosystem level, because you're using data to aggregate it for the entire ecosystem. And that's important because then you see all these interdependencies.
I just want to add one more comment, because if I was very flippant and very off the record, describing an ecosystem builder, I would say it's somebody who tries to connect everybody, gathers all the data, and then gets control of the whole ecosystem, and thereby, puts themselves in the best position, gets the money. But I hear you, Ketil, talking about how you're optimizing the value chain and the position of everybody, and basically putting to good use unused or underutilized resources. And to me, this is a really, really nice example of a healthy, new, digitally driven ecosystem.
Yeah, so
it's healthy because it's cooperative. It's not too competitive.
Exactly. So we give value back to the ecosystem, because then we become a valid player, and then we use less on sales. We are a natural part of their business process. We give value all the time. And so in a way, we exchange the data and our value into creating people who promote us, sells us, and gives us access to new customers. So our business model is not on the data that we give away back to the ecosystem. Our business model is to end users who like our solution. I want seamless openings and things in the garage. But for all others, we give that value back, so they become our promoters and our sales force in a way. And I want to just, since you live at Fornebu, Silvija, I didn't know that. We are, as part of OBO's partner, all of Fornebu has a huge problem. You already know that today, and it will be even bigger in the future as a huge development with 20,000 apartments in 2030. So we are now installing Parkio to get that data on how Fornebu's garages will be in the future, to reduce number of cars, lessen the logistics, give more access to sustainable mobility like bikes for everybody. So actually, you are one of our key customers in the future on the data you are giving now, and that will probably end up with OBOS building very different garages in just a few years. Smaller garages, more flexible garages, and so on.
And perhaps also taking some responsibility for the service of micromobility on Fornebu. And I think it's a perfect place because, you know, they're old people's homes, there are kindergartens, there are all these places where people need help with mobility. And it's very well suited for thinking about new models like connected, autonomous types of vehicles, etc.
Yeah, and they're very focused on creating kind of a lighthouse for future urban development at Fornebu. So they're actually using a lot of time with us on how to help Fornebu become a great place to live for old, for young, with little traffic and not micromobility littered everywhere, but actually in the garage. Everybody should go down and take their mobility tool that they need for the job. Are you going to the kindergarten 300 meters? A car is a bad tool. A bike for the kids is a good tool. So.
Excellent. Lars, towards the end, you want to highlight a couple of challenges, or what would you like to what would you like students to remember?
I think I would like, I could give the listeners an assignment after listening to this, because I think what we've been talking about now in the presentation, we heard about Parkio. If they take as the point of departure goal number 17, which is essentially about cooperation, partnerships, alliances, building an ecosystem, if you wish. If they take that as a point of departure and then they listen to what Ketil have said, they can see what other goals from 1 to 16 is Parqio actually addressing. And they will find quite a few of these goals embedded in the departure of goal 17. And again, that's sort of the message of this series, that if we fail with 17, we will fail with 1 to 16.
Yeah.
That is both a small assignment and a summary.
I don't know if the master thesis for the students that followed us last year is public, Lars, but if people are interested, I think that's a very good place to start and have a look at that thesis, because it details a lot of our early work on creating this ecosystem that is actually now up and running, even early, but it's now actually working.
Yeah, no, it was a very, I think it was confidential for 1 year, so it's available now. And the external grader was quick and solid on concluding that this was a solid A. So it's a good master thesis and a nice thing. So that's a good advice.
We'll attach a PDF to that from our platform as well then. Thank you both so much. It was a very inspiring and a very educational talk about how to think new, both about sustainability goals, especially goal number 17, and how to build very healthy ecosystems for the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.